Hello, hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. Boy, did we get news about 30 minutes ago, and we'll get into it, but all of U.S. soccer is absolutely stunned, and someone else who is stunned that he's already done with moving is Ryan. Ryan, how are you?
Doing well. Happy to officially be moved apartments. That was why I was out last week. So I'm thankful that the process is over and there were minimal curse words said during the entire ordeal.
And to my right is John Steve Jobs Morrissey, apparently.
Yeah, I didn't realize with the sweater game that I was pulling tonight. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing well. I think none of us expected to talk about what we were going to be talking about, but it's a darn shame.
All right, so let's just go ahead and get into it. Why don't we? It is the League One Final and Championship Conference Final preview show, but we got to talk about the Boger bomb. Memphis, according to Tom Boger, says that Memphis 901 has transferred their USL Championship franchise rights to Santa Barbara. Per sources, Memphis will not play in 2025. Santa Barbara will join the USL Championships in 2026. The league has approved it. This transfer is due to no viable stadium solution for Memphis. There's a lot of ramifications to this. There is a lot of things to talk about in terms of conference alignment and whatnot, but I think the most important thing to talk about here is Memphis is losing their club over, once again, government kind of semantics in not having stadium finances, and they're left without a home.
I mean, it's a story we've seen a number of times at this level, right? And where we get a team at the end of the season that doesn't want to keep losing money, doesn't have a stadium situation that's quite settled. It just leads to instability year in and year out. And it's really just unjust for these fan bases and these communities that have poured their support into clubs, found a sense of belonging with the people that go out every weekend and support these teams. We can get into what this means for the championship and the optics and everything with Santa Barbara, but I really do just want to throw it out there. Like, you hate to see this happen for the passionate supporters in Memphis.
Yeah, and this is coming from someone who's also lost their club previously and has still followed the league since then, that it's just something you never want to see happen at any level within U.S. soccer. It's not good for the game here, and it doesn't breathe a sense of confidence into the viability of the sport if you see a team like this have to go on what you would hope is just a hiatus and a sense to potentially return in the future. But we've seen how that's been with the OKC Energy, that a promise to return in the future might not always pan out, and it might still be just something of a dream to continue. So our hearts definitely go out to the Memphis 901 FC fan base, the supporters groups, the communities, and even the players too. If this is how they were finding out that their team isn't returning for next year, you really hope that the players, the front office, the coaching staff can all find their next role, their next job, to have it be within the championship, League One, another league. So it really just is an all around just kind of crappy situation.
Something I kind of said behind, into our chat, but I'm going to kind of throw it out there. There was this rumor that was kind of when I say kind of, I heard it like twice, that Memphis would not be in the championship next year. I didn't think that's what this meant. I thought this was going to be a drop down to League One, possibly play at Memphis University, whichever one it is, and play at their soccer stadium and continue that way. This is not what I expected. And so this is just kind of just legalese, I guess, soccer legalese. This was a transfer of their USL Championship transfer rights, which means Memphis did not get League One rights in return. They just simply sold their championship rights. What that means in the future for Memphis is that in order for Memphis to make a return, they're going to need to buy championship rights again, likely from a new owner, and basically start all over. This is not going to be they return from hiatus, we're back, and whatever, kind of like OKC. OKC still has their territory rights. They don't have to buy their way back into the league. In order for Memphis to return, assuming that the territory rights from, say, Fort Worth, that whole thing is not, or Austin is not transferred over to Memphis, they're going to have to spend the full, what is it now, like 30 something $million to buy back into the league.
And I think the thing with Memphis, you obviously didn't think the writing was on the wall, but looking at some of the indicators, like they averaged 6,600 fans back in 2019, and it's been a slow decline every year since then, to the point that they were under a 3,000 average attendance in 2024. We've seen the quality of the pitch. We've seen some of those kind of outside factors that just show that Memphis maybe didn't have it fully together in the way that inspires confidence. That doesn't make it less surprising. And it also kind of plants the seed of fear of, if you're another club who's dropping off in attendance a little bit, who doesn't own their own venue and thus has to absorb the cost of rent, doesn't get as much from the gate, what is your future in a league where it's hard to find that financial viability?
Yeah, and John, you've followed all the attendances for this entire season. I'm trying to scroll back and find at least your stats on that. And there were only a handful of teams who saw at least a growth in their attendance year over year from last season. I think that was Charleston was one of them, and I can't recall the name of the other.
Charleston and Loudoun were the big two, yeah.
And it's just kind of a growing concern that you see a team at this level dropping out of the league and not being able to make it financially viable. And all of us know how razor thin the margins are for some of these teams if they're turning a profit, even to begin with. And it's just really a concern for USL as a whole. But I mean, to shift the conversation, how does this feel for like Santa Barbara, who by all accounts were fairly quiet and much of their lead up, they have been part of at least a growth into USL 1, and now they're going to be making an even larger jump up into the championship in 2026.
Let me just kind of address this really fast. The question of Soccer Night in Detroit, why couldn't they play at the Liberty Bowl? Another configuration was wonky, but could they have made it work? No, not really, because kind of like what John mentioned, they would have to eat the cost. And it is much more financially viable for the club to stay at AutoZone Park because it's a smaller venue. Thus, they have to pay less in stuff like security, electricity, plumbing, and concessions. That's the other one. It is cheaper to rent a smaller venue. The issue with going to the Liberty Bowl, despite the fact that it probably would be better for soccer in general, is that Memphis would have to eat a lot more cost, which clearly was the biggest issue here.
Thinking on the Santa Barbara side of things a little bit, obviously we'll wait until 2026 for them to really get the ball rolling. If you were talking to people in League One circles, kind of with that outside perspective, there were some doubts about Santa Barbara heading into 2025 just because they had gone radio silent. Whether that's an indicator of trouble behind the scenes or they were just kind of buckling down and getting ready for this announcement remains to be seen. But it's an interesting setup for Santa Barbara, who kind of retrenches the USL in California after a bit of loss given the exit of the MLS Next Pro sides, given the loss of San Diego last season. It's an interesting and good market to have, albeit at the expense of Memphis, makes it really quite bittersweet.
Yeah, you mentioned California really gaining another new foothold in USL teams. This will be the 5th team in California in the USL Championship. And when you throw in Las Vegas and Phoenix, you have really a nice number of teams in that part of the country. And we always used to think in the past that the Western Conference was so spread out, but to now have about 7 teams within a regional kind of closeness to each other in that part of the country is really something of growth for the USL Championship. And ironically enough, now you have a Birmingham team in the Eastern Conference who seems to be on a kind of an island right now in the Southeast, which is something strange to think about.
Yeah, the Birmingham side of this is that with the addition of Lexington, Birmingham was already preparing to go to the West. The only way that that was not the case was if someone like Miami were to drop out or another team in the East, which is still not, I guess you can never say it's out of the cards because, well, this came out of nowhere. But as of now, you are looking at a Birmingham team that even if a team drops out in the East, that they are going to be guaranteed to go to the West. Your other two teams that are on that line is going to be Indy 11, Louisville City, and Detroit City. Those are your three other teams that could see a flip to the West, but let's be really brutally honest here. Louisville City's never going to the West. That will never happen. Indy 11 is their biggest rival, and for again, Lou City, big rivalry. One of the biggest rivalries that the league loves to promote is Indy 11 versus Lou City. They're not going to lose that away fixture. In Detroit City, having Indy, Louisville, and Pittsburgh in that close radius in the East, the league is not going to move them. So Birmingham is guaranteed essentially to go to the West here because they don't have anybody near them already. So it's not like they're going to be losing any local rivalries, and they're the closest one on that line. So how is Birmingham going to deal with the travel now that they're in the West when they're going to have to travel even farther than Memphis did all last year, which who knows if that is something that played into this decision, but it certainly couldn't have helped.
No, it's an interesting conundrum in terms of that conference divide. Like you think about Lexington and Brooklyn coming in, pretty certain Eastern Conference teams. If there are any other changes in the setup, you kind of think the USL has to look at divisions once again. Maybe not to the extreme of those 4-team pods that we saw during COVID, but something a little bit more regional that just makes it, I don't know, less silly than something like Louisville City possibly playing in the West. Like that doesn't make any sense for really any party involved. You can still get some interdivision games, of course, but I don't know, thinking outside the box a little bit would be the obvious answer if it goes to that extreme.
I mean, if we're going to have 25 teams in the league next year, that's 5 divisions of 5.
And Taylor, I will say Memphis ended up with the 4th best away record in the West. So you don't have to mourn about the away travel burden, hopefully.
No, they just decide to sign good players. I don't know.
Well, hey, there's no one who's going to just poach the Legion's best players at this point.
Legion will poach themselves and then somehow only sign the wingers. It's weird. But, something that is to be talked about, if they go to a 3-team division, which would, or not 3-team, excuse me, 3 division conferences, essentially, it would completely open the door to Jaeger Cup fully, as you would play everybody in that conference home and away, and you would play everybody else in the league once. You're down to 28 odd matches. Yeah. That opens the door for Jägermeister. And if the USL Championship or USL HQ was looking for a way to entice championship owners, saying, hey, you're going to be playing less matches next year, do you want to get more tickets through the door? Do you want to open up your doors and get all 36? That's probably their best way of doing it.
No, I mean, given the way that the USL Championship is growing, given how hard it makes it to schedule, kind of cutting back on league games and throwing up those Jägermeister Cup dates has to be the logical solution to still give the owners the matches they need in their home venues. Would not be surprised to see us kind of move in that direction heading into hopefully 2025.
All right. Well, that is Memphis talk, and we'll obviously talk about this more when we have more conversations, when we find out more information. I do have one quick question. Was Santa Barbara one of the Super League teams, possibly?
Yes, I'm 95% sure.
I was pretty sure of that as well. I, I don't think, obviously, this is going to impact that, but if anything,
No.
yes. So I guess 2026 for everything still. So
Yeah.
be on the lookout for that.
Looks like only Oakland, Phoenix, and Tucson in terms of kind of West Coasty Super League clubs. Interesting.
Spokane.
Well, I mean, of the new batch, but yes.
But Phoenix has said that they're not involved with that project, and Tucson was supposed to be alive, but they're still dead.
Yeah. So
we'll see. Let's go ahead and go on. Let's go to the League One Final, where Union Omaha absolutely just, I mean, they did give Greenville the work after Greenville gave them a scare early on, but Omaha showed why they were indeed Omaha. Meanwhile, Spokane, I mean, if you were to ask anybody who the worst team coming into the League One playoffs was, Spokane is probably number one on that list, coming into the playoffs 7 winless. And suddenly they have found a defensive setup that is just making teams struggle. It is 1 versus 7. Union Omaha, again, gets a 2-1 win over the Greenville Triumph. And Spokane Velocity, ride 0-0 all the way to the playoffs, where it appears that Brooks Thompson is just that guy in penalty shootouts. How do we just see this one going?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking back to the games that both of these teams just played, right? Like that Greenville win was a really impressive one for Omaha, where starts, I don't want to say shaky, but they really give up a goal in the first extended spell of possession that Greenville gets in that game. A little bit of miscommunication in the midfield, forces defensive overreaction. The Triumph work it well, but it's not what you want to see in terms of the discipline at the back for Omaha. And then pretty much for the next 80 minutes, they were in control. I thought it was a somewhat more direct offensive performance from Omaha, really trying to get Zico Lewis engaged between the lines and Kunga touches out wide where he can take players on one-on-one. You pretty much liked everything you saw from that game from about the 10th minute onward for them. Spokane is figuring out a way to win close. I think a lot of their early season success, when we were pleasantly surprised by the Velocity, was mainly inspired by their offensive approach, right? Like the way they were able to control the ball in the midfield, get Lewis, Denton, Colin Fernandez touches, and just possess other teams to death. It's less of that like possession first style that we're seeing, but it's no less effective. They've got the spark of Akale out wide. I think they've really figured it out in terms of what they're getting from the striker spot. Like Anwar Pelaez is that guy, but Josh Dalling came off the bench and was crucial against Madison because he didn't necessarily have to be the classic number 9 making those runs in behind. In terms of this game, like, yes, Omaha is the favorite, but you can't count out Spokane just because of how disciplined they look, how well they've defended in block. So I do lean the way of Omaha, but I'm excited for the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about teams who are at least kind of getting hot at the right moment, and we'll certainly discuss it when we get into the USL Championship. But Spokane is entering this game with a shutout streak of 328 minutes dating back into the regular season as well. It's a team that's been very disciplined in getting to this part. I mean, it really burst onto the scene when they beat Northern Colorado 3-0 earlier this season or earlier in the playoffs, and then to basically ground out a 0-0 result against Madison, a Madison team that Kaylor Hewitt had talked about earlier this season as having one of the league's best defenses. It was truly an impressive showing on Spokane's part. However, you look at this Omaha team, a team currently in my ELO ratings as on track to have, if they win this, the best ever USL 1 season in league history, and it's really hard to kind of ignore how well this Omaha team has played. Spokane was the last team to beat them in the league, but when you look at just everything Omaha has done so far, and that they're hosting the final, the host of the final has yet to lose the USL One Cup. It's really tilted in Omaha's favor, but like John said, you can't count out the velocity.
You know, this is one of those matches that you're going to be looking for, just like all finals, you're looking for the edge, right? Where is this one going to lean? You're not going to rely on Spokane on keeping this, shutout streak going, not against this Union Omaha team. A team that has scored, if I can just do some quick math here, like 11 goals now against this velocity team. This Omaha team can break them down, but the Spokane team's also hot. I think when you're looking for this edge, I think genuinely this comes down to Union Omaha fans. I know that sounds ridiculous, but the thing that you're looking at is a 1 versus 7. How late into this match you get into the second half and Union Omaha sees it's still 0-0? Is there a moment of we're one of the best teams to grace this league and we're struggling against Spokane? It's kind of up to the fans here to make sure they're so rowdy that they can't even think about them not being able to score. I also think there's another side of this where Union Omaha is playing for not themselves. They're not playing for the fans. They're playing for a teammate in Jerome who's lost everything. And I think that when you're looking for outside motivation, Spokane knows they're playing with house money. They're not going to sit there in their training camp and say, hey, we're the underdog. We're not supposed to be here. Let's just go out there and have a good time. They are going to tell themselves that they are the favorites because that's what competitors do. But Union Omaha are going to see a teammate who is going through one of the worst things you could kind of imagine as a human, is just losing everything. It's hard for me to see Union Omaha lose when they have all that behind them. That said, I think Spokane is going to grind this Union Omaha team down defensively. I think that they are like Spokane's defense, that is. I think they are going to be tough to break down. I think they're going to frustrate Union Omaha. I think it's going to be a little bit tighter than we would have thought maybe if we saw this matchup earlier on this season.
It's interesting with that Spokane defense where the last time these teams played was that 4-0 league win for Union Omaha. It was kind of the last time we saw Spokane use a back three. They were a little bit dysfunctional at the back, lacked the communication they needed. After that point, Lee Vaidman leans into the 4-4-2. And that's been the thing that took Spokane into the playoffs and has allowed them to get to this point. Now, granted, there have been some ups and downs. There were moments against Madison where Derek Gebhardt in particular was able to carve out those touches between the lines. And no team can do that quite like Union Omaha can. That said, if Spokane can slow the tempo, make sure that they are kind of balancing things out, they're able to shift side to side and keep that shape. The longer this game goes at 0-0 or 1-1, the more it favors the velocity and the more it sets them up for Brooks Thompson to do his thing.
What's interesting with Omaha is the last 6 games in which they've scored a goal, they've scored at least one goal in the second half. So this is a team that's done well with making halftime adjustments, coming out ready to play in the second 45 and just really going after games. And I think, Kaylor, you're spot on that the longer this game goes forward, if Omaha is still tied or, God forbid, falling behind a goal, I think they're really going to push for a score.
I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of this, but as soon as this match is over, who knows what we'll find out. I mean, Jordan Farr is apparently a DC United player, and we found that out 3 seconds after the game ended. So at what point do we just say Brooks Thompson should be in the championship or higher? I mean,
well, Hartford signed him, and then he just couldn't play over Renan Ribeiro.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I think if anything, this run has just proved not only is he a good shot stopper, is he a good young talent, he knows how to organize a back line. I mean, you watch when he came into this team, this defense got fixed. It's not exactly 1-to-1, but he is a large part of that. I think that if you're Brooks Thompson or if you're Brooks Thompson's agent, you are sitting there saying, we got ourselves a move to somewhere higher as a starter, because there's no way he goes to a championship club and is the number 2 at this point. He is firmly somebody's number 1, and he deserves to be. But anybody have anything else on this Union Omaha versus Spokane match?
Yeah, just to be clear, picking Omaha. And because I feel bad about the championship games, I'm locking Omaha this week, but it's more like that's just how I have to default, because I think this is going to be a really close game.
I've picked Omaha as well, and I'll even attach a score line to this one and say it'll be 2-0 Omaha.
I'm also going Omaha, which fully convinces me that Spokane's going to somehow win this match. We didn't really talk about him that much. He got the goal, and I think it was the game winner. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now. But Zico Lewis is just so good. And the way he just kind of floats through the midfield, makes those late runs into the box, or can play provider. He's just one of my favorite players to watch in League One. Something that's kind of fun, I don't think we mentioned it at all actually in this matchup. Luis Hill gets to play against Union Omaha in the final.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Love to see it.
So let's go ahead and go to the championship final, where we are in the conference finals. And we have Charleston Battery versus Rhode Island FC. This is the first time in 10 years where Louisville City is not in the Eastern Conference Final for the first time ever. But that is because, Rhode Island absolutely took it to Louisville City. Meanwhile, on the other side, Charleston Battery go down early. Manuel Arteaga gets a goal for Tampa Bay Rowdies, but then it's kind of who you think it would be. It was Nick Marcanic with a picture-perfect header, and Aaron Malloy, who I know how to spell his name now. Hate myself. Where Aaron Malloy, just one of the best free kicks I have ever seen, gets a 2-1 win over the Tampa Bay Rowdies. And before, John, you jump into this, let's go ahead and look at how Rhode Island took down that Louisville City team.
FC advances to the conference finals. It's really easy to focus on JJ Williams and this team's attack as a big reason why they're moving on. But I want to talk about the defensive effort that allowed them to keep a rare clean sheet at Lynn Family Stadium. You're going to see a couple sequences here, starting with one where Rhode Island is in the high press. JJ Williams and Noah Fuson are pushing up high, applying pressure to the goalkeeper and not allowing Louisville to play out safely. Now, this forces a long ball, and that really plays into Rhode Island's hands. Few teams are as good at setting up a structure in second ball situations. Here you see a center back, Morris Duggan, advancing, and Georgia Quizera filling behind him from wingback. Meanwhile, 2 of the 3 Rhode Island midfielders are closing down on the space where a header is likely to end up. As the play develops, Louisville can't claim possession, can't keep the attack moving, and it turns into a chance at the other end, just like that for Rhode Island. You're going to see another defensive sequence starting here that shows a little bit of a deeper seated pressing situation. Now, note Noah Fuson is deeper at the start of this play. You've almost got a diamond-like midfield, one that stops Louisville City from moving down the middle of the park, where they can activate players like Taylor Davila, for instance. That situation, that setup for Rhode Island, constantly forced Louisville City to work around the edges. Now you're going to see that playing out here, and you'll note the fact that Rhode Island is keeping a pristine back 5 initially. They don't want Quizera to step up and allow Taylor Davila to get behind too early. But when the situation comes, when they can get a double team on Aiden McFadden, like you're seeing here, they instantly close down and apply that pressure. Now note what happens when the play circulates. Rhode Island has immediately found their structure again. It's 5-3-2. It's hard to break down. And Lou City has to try for a long ball that's a little bit ambitious, and it's playing into Rhode Island's hands once more. Again, you're seeing the situational pressure applied. It's JJ Williams coming low, showing off that effort to get the takeaway, and you're going to see Rhode Island clear their lines to end the play. Moments like that, structures like that, set this team apart.
Yeah, and that was a tactic show where right at the end I realized, oh, wait, I'm about to hit that time limit where it won't let us post it to Twitter. So hence why I just say one sentence at the end and dip. Kaylor is muted.
I mean, until we get the
Every
Mission
time,
Impossible
every time.
trailers.
Yeah, no, I had to edit it anyway. It was 1 second over. 1 second.
I thought I had it down. Ugh.
You were close. You were very close. No, but this was Rhode Island really shut down Lou City, and the way you break it down, just a total team press. I mean, everything that you saw, especially the thing that you pointed out with JJ Williams, just putting some pressure on the ball, getting a slight touch on it, forcing a heavy touch, and Rhode Island being able to clear it away. I mean, Lou City created some chances, but nothing really. It felt so uncharacteristically Louisville because they kind of got out Louisvilled. It's impressive.
And all season, it felt like Rhode Island just had Louisville's number. I mean, we recall their earlier meeting in the season where Louisville played Rhode Island at Lynn Family Stadium, and it was Rhode Island walking out with a 5-2 win. And this is a Rhode Island team who in the playoffs have scored 6 goals now, and leading into the playoffs had that 8-goal match against, albeit a very weak Miami FC team. But if we're going to talk about teams who are getting hot at the right time in terms of Spokane, this is a Rhode Island team that is just firing on all cylinders right here in the postseason.
And you think about the flow of this game where you get that early goal from JJ Williams, but it really undercut what Louisville City's strategy was of sitting the wingbacks a little bit deeper, so you're not going to get taken advantage of when you get the combination play from Harivo and Fuson and Quizera on that left side. Like one turnover off a bad throw-in, suddenly RFC is down the wing scoring that go-ahead goal, and the game changes completely. And even with Louisville City chasing the equalizer, Rhode Island only gave up one chance worth more than 0.1 XG in the first 60 minutes of the game. Like that was a dominant defensive showing from end to end from them. Like such an impressive effort to shut down what's been an unstoppable Louisville City side. And we kind of saw it in the tactic show of making sure they can't take over the channels, making sure that you're getting the back pressure from the forwards and restricting that space. It's the sort of effort that like a million coaches can say, go do this. Few teams can execute on it quite like Rhode Island has in the postseason.
I think that one thing with Rhode Island is despite JJ Williams having 5 goals in 2 games at this point, he's really not the offensive player you're totally worried about. Like Noah Fuson, Zach Caravone, Quizera, who's not going to be at this match because he's on international duty. Holstad. I mean, even Ybarra is doing a lot of stuff in this midfield area where JJ Williams is really the last piece of the puzzle that if JJ Williams gets the ball, granted, I know you see the first goal and you see kind of the magic that he does dribbling through like 3 defenders. I understand that. But you're trying to shut everybody else down before it ever gets to JJ Williams. JJ is not necessarily one of those target forwards, despite being like 6'5" and an absolute monster. He's not like a target forward where they're just lumping the ball into him. They're working the ball through the midfield. That if the ball gets to JJ, you've already kind of lost. He's not the guy you're trying to shut down. You're just trying to make sure it just doesn't get to him. You're doing anything else that you can. He's really going to give Charleston, not him, but just the entire midfield, give Charleston just so much to deal with because you're having to shut down essentially 5-6 players.
Yeah, and I mean, thinking about the Charleston win, right, where that's a bit of a stop-start game at the beginning. You've got the extended stoppage because Crisostomo goes down with that facial injury. And Tampa Bay wasn't in control, but they were certainly able to find their spots in transition. Multiple times it was Cal Jennings breaking over the top, kind of finding the gap behind Chris Allen, who's done an admirable job playing left back given the injuries. But Jennings was able to still find the ability to get past him. And I think smartly, coming out of halftime, Ben Pierman recognized we ought to just switch up the attacking line and go with something a little bit more like what we did for most of the regular season. So you got Marcanic back out on the wing, ditto for Juan David Torres. The flow improved immediately for my eyes. Like Charleston was getting in behind more often, more fluid with their runs, had better chemistry with the passing. Obviously, the Malloy goal is going to be the one that steals the headlines, but the passing play that built up to Nick Marcanic's equalizer was equally impressive. Like just some lovely soccer from that Charleston Battery team. It's the kind of thing that makes you encouraged of maybe they can be the team that finally breaks Rhode Island down.
And especially if you're looking at a Charleston team who got so close last season, and with that crazy penalty shootout in the final last year at home, it really seemed like this season was kind of a mission to not only win the Eastern Conference again and get back to that final, but to win the entire cup this season. And having that motivation, having been a team who's only lost one match at home this year, it shows that I feel like they're going to have enough that will will them across the line in this match and kind of return to the cup final.
Now, I don't want to speak out of turn here, so if I'm totally wrong here, just tell me to shut up. Something that, and this is just kind of looking at similar, I guess, teams because it was a lot of these players were on that team, kind of go back to Memphis, right? We would have seen probably, with a center back being out, where Nate DeSantos plays wing back, you would probably just see Chris Allen tuck in as that midfielder. Aaron Malloy plays center back and just be a ball-carrying center back. And you saw that a lot at Memphis. Putting Chris Allen at left back seems like a risk. And it felt like that until he gets the pass that gives you Nick Marcanic's header. I mean, it's just a perfect cross. It did not get any better than that. It was just so good. And this flexibility of this Charleston team where you have Marcanic playing that kind of wing area, you can put him up top. Conway was causing trouble a good bit in the beginning. This team is just so flexible that you can look at 7 of these guys and just rotate them anywhere you can around this lineup, and it will work. Not to just sit there and say, give Tampa Bay their flowers, but I mean, oh my God, Jordan Farr played so well, and I feel kind of bad for him. I mean, they get undone with where Marcanic almost gets lost a little bit into a bunch of people and headed in. And again, one of the best free kick goals that I've ever seen are what undid Jordan Farr. He was making stop after stop after stop after stop. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable how well Jordan Farr played. But furthermore, unbelievable how Charleston could break them down. I think this is going to be a fascinating matchup. I think that as we see on this graphic that's on the screen, both matches were a draw. Shocker, Rhode Island was involved. If this makes it down to penalties because it stays a draw, Adam Grimwis is someone that I feel like I can trust in those penalty shootouts. Koke Vegas as well. Koke Vegas is very, very good in the penalty shootouts, but Grimwis just has that about him where he just continues to show up. And I think he had a couple of penalty saves during the season as well. I feel like I'm leading Charleston.
Yeah, I mean, getting into this matchup, the big thing on the Rhode Island side is what change are you making given that Quazera isn't going to be in the team? In the past, it would have been easy to say, okay, cool, we're putting Morris Duggan at left wing back. Given that you've gotten a Darce at right wing back, like how do you swing that without getting overly defensive? I half wonder if Noah Fuson doesn't go back to one of the wing back spots, something we've seen a couple times this year. I know the secret sauce for this club has been Fuson and Williams up top at striker. That said, like bringing Albert Dequa into the starting lineup probably isn't a bad thing to have happen. On the Charleston side of it, I'm expecting a pretty similar lineup unless Josh Jack is healthy enough to start at left back. That said, pick-wise, I just believe in the Rhode Island Magic right now. I think the defensive structure is really going to give Charleston struggles. I think that Williams' form is the kind of thing that wins championships. We've seen it with Damas. We've seen it with players in that mold time and again. I don't know. It's going to be a tough game at Patriots Point, but when push comes to shove, I'm here for Rhode Island.
Yeah, we'll be looking at a Rhode Island team who will be trying to accomplish something that we haven't seen since Sacramento Republic joined the league in 2014, and it would be an expansion side winning the league in your first go-around. Having had both of these games in a draw, and as John Fuller points out in the chat, both of the teams in the West also had their two in-season matchups in a draw as well. This is, I think, going to be a really close matchup. I actually have this one ending as a draw at 90, but I do think it gets decided in 120 minutes when we don't go to penalties. I am backing the Charleston Battery to win this one. This is going to be one of the closest USL Eastern Conference matchups as per my ELO ratings in league history. But I think the Battery playing at home will have enough to at least will themselves over the line that they win it in 120 minutes.
This is where I'm going to just kind of quietly put it out there. I've already planned a vacation to like the Charleston next week, so I'm really hoping they win.
Yeah, if they win, Mr. Ben Clemens, write this down. We're coming. Actually, wait. The Rhode Island can't host. Never mind. Boo.
Yeah, it's fine.
By the way, on the
has something to say
quick.
about that.
Yeah. Grinwis career in the USL, not in shootouts, just in like the run of play. He has conceded 6 penalties on 7 against. Coque Vegas has faced 11 and conceded 9. So both are okay, but a little bit below par, actually.
Grinwis just has the insanity thing about him. I mean, I watched his entire face get kicked through his skull, and he just got up and started yelling at fans immediately afterward. And I'm like, this guy's a psychopath, so I'm going to trust anything that he does. So let's go ahead and go out west, why don't we? Where we have Colorado Springs Switchbacks versus Las Vegas Lights. Can I tell y'all something I have beef with?
Please.
Rhode Island, Charleston, very similar colors. Colorado Springs, Las Vegas, very similar colors. I could have put the yellow for Las Vegas, but nobody thinks that the yellow is part of Las Vegas's colors. I'm just throwing it out there.
I lean into the pink when I'm doing graphic things just because it's there.
That's fair. I didn't think about it. Anyway, where you have Colorado Springs, where they had one of the worst just beginnings of a match that you've ever seen. Was that Speedy Williams who tried to head the ball back to Christian Herrera for some ungodly reason, and then they fight their way back. Zandy is just, I mean, he had just an all-world match. And then you look at Las Vegas, where if New Mexico A could finish the ball, or B simply look to their right and see Akale was wide open like 7 times instead of lining one up from 25 yards away, we might be looking at a different story. But you know, an interception and a breakaway from Corey Bennett is all that it took, and we have Las Vegas Lights versus Colorado Springs in the Western Conference Final.
Yeah, I want to kind of start with the Las Vegas perspective because I thought they played a very poor match in New Mexico, for being honest. Like that Corey Bennett chance was more than a quarter of their XG for the game. They really could not break New Mexico down in low block, despite the fact that they were upwards of 60% possession, if I'm remembering correctly. It's not like Dennis Sanchez reinvented the wheel or brought anything different to the table. He trusted his guys. We got the same patterns of like Nigro coming in, kind of tucking in like an additional center mid to allow players to push high. The tape is out on this team to a certain extent. If I'm arguing the other way, though, you think about that goal. Las Vegas isn't a team that scores on the counterattack. They break you down. They're slow. They develop plays gradually. If they can bring that level of flair, that level of explosiveness in the Western Conference Final, I think that bodes really well for their hopes.
Yeah, before I at least dive into mine, I do at least want to pat myself on the back for, and I think for all of us, that we had called Colorado Springs versus Las Vegas for the Western Conference Final from the start of the playoffs. We thought both of these teams were probably the two best teams in the Western Conference. To have them meet here in the final, they're the two highest remaining teams in terms of my ELO ratings for the Western Conference at the moment. I think with this match, playing at home is going to be incredibly crucial for Colorado Springs. With Las Vegas and their trips to the Switchbacks, they've only won one meeting and one occasion, which was 2019. And I think with Colorado Springs being the best team in the Western Conference this year when playing at home, that's going to be something that gives them a boost here, and especially against a Las Vegas team who has to make the trip up into the elevation for this matchup. It's going to be a really fun one. And if Las Vegas can rebound from what, John, you had mentioned was a very poor showing against New Mexico despite advancing, I feel like they can be the perfect team to really just climb their way into the final.
I'm more or less just frustrated with the way New Mexico played. I'm gonna be honest.
Sure.
They played so well until they got to the final third. I mean, the amount of just point blank chances. I mean, the Ryko Rosarena, I think it was a kick save. What was that, like the 60th something minute?
Yeah,
that was it shouldn't even have been within his wingspan, let alone being able to kick save it. And not just that, there were so many times where they had Akale on the right making a run, nobody around, but they would just pick their head up and take a shot. And I think there was a weird way that the lab was too good of a atmosphere because everybody wanted to make it explode. Everybody wanted to be a hero. And there was so many times where there was a better pass, a better shot, a better chance, but they were just trying to make something happen and they forced it. But like you said, I mean, Las Vegas, I mean, they get the interception, breakaway goal, Corey Bennett finishes. I mean, if you're Las Vegas, like you said, that gives them so much confidence coming into this, knowing that they did not play their game and they still walked away with the win. If I am Colorado Springs, I'm a little bit nervous about this because I think this is a Las Vegas team that can really counter what you do. But it's so hard for me to see Colorado Springs losing this match. This just feels like Colorado Springs is going to be making it to the finals.
I mean, I've been extremely pro Switchbacks. I had them coming out of the West when I did my bracket before the playoffs started. Watching that game against Orange County didn't exactly instill much confidence in me, if I'm going to be honest. So often, Orange County was able to just play a pretty simple pass over the top and hit Bryce Jamison, hit Cameron Dunbar on the break. Now, pretty much no team in the league has been able to stop like Bryce Jamison with a head of steam behind him. I understand that. But it shows a bit of weakness. It shows a bit of disorganization where the high line and the high press have been so good for Colorado Springs for much of the year that if Las Vegas can do what they did to decide that match in New Mexico, that feels like it could be replicable. The big question for me is, what do the Lights do in the midfield? I think they really came on strong when they played JC Ngando and Usman Jabong together in the pivot rather than using Jabong as a center back. Going with that duo that gives you a little bit more defensive steel as opposed to starting Charlie Adams kind of feels like the right call if you want to stop those late runs from Zach Zandy. So curious to see what happens in terms of the lineup choice from Dennis Sanchez. But overall, something about Las Vegas is making them feel like the team that advances to the final here.
Yeah, John, I'm with you that I had also picked Colorado Springs to win my Western Conference from the start of the playoffs, and having gotten 3 out of the 4 semifinalists for this playoffs this year, I feel that since I've already lost the league champion that I predicted with Louisville, I should be still sticking by Colorado Springs to win the Western Conference. So although I've been concerned about how they've been playing lately, and especially in that match against Orange County, I still am going to back Colorado Springs to win this match and win the Western Conference.
So let's talk about hosting. Also, I did not put a lock in. I'm just going to throw it out there. I feel good about absolutely 0. So I'm also going to go Union Omaha, but I don't like it in the slightest. Let's talk about hosting. The hosting priority is as follows: Charleston Battery, Colorado Springs, Las Vegas Lights, Rhode Island. Rhode Island cannot host the final. The Charleston Battery, if they win, they host the final. If Colorado Springs wins, it kind of depends on who wins. If Colorado Springs wins, the only way they can host the final is if Rhode Island wins. If Las Vegas wins, the only way they host the finals is if Rhode Island wins. So we are looking at priority of the Battery, Colorado Springs, Las Vegas Lights, and Rhode Island. Rhode Island has 0 chance. Harry Austin put out a good question on Blue Sky. Check out our Blue Sky, where there is a little segment in here where the league has the right to change the host site in its reasonable discretion, where he mentions that the F1 race is in Las Vegas this weekend, or that weekend, where if Las Vegas were to host, they would be going against the same time F1, where that would be an interesting situation. Where would the league flex out of it, or will the league see this as a chance of people are flying in from all over the country, they're going to be in town? What do people who are not American love to do? They love to watch soccer. There's a chance that they might see this as a massive opportunity to sell out the stadium for a final. That's an interesting little nugget that was put in there. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, it goes Battery, Colorado Springs, Las Vegas, and Rhode Island.
I think just to kind of talk about the discretion thing or whatever, that would be an abomination if they moved the title game out of Las Vegas if it was going to be there. Like, that would be the most anti-competitive thing the USL could possibly do. So what if F1 is there? That's not how you decide your championship game. Like, that just cannot be a consideration. I understand why, like, we're talking about it as a question, but like, I would be shocked beyond belief if they actually did that.
And not to mention that where Cashman Field is located relative to where the F1 track is located, there's not going to be that much overlap in terms if you're looking at foot traffic or just people who are trying to have like a coordination of police, security, and everyone else. There's not, and that Cashman Field is not as close to where the F1 circuit is in terms of Las Vegas. Sure, you'd get people having a lot more competition for hotel rooms, but there is so many other workarounds that they could do for scheduling this match that shouldn't be taken away from Las Vegas if they were to host the final.
Again, I just think that if anything, the F1 race would actually be better for the league because you're getting a lot of people who enjoy soccer, which is essentially all Europeans going to where a league final would be.
Discretion isn't, there's another event in the city. It's like there was a hurricane and we're going to move the game. Like it's not a subjective, oh, there's another thing happening is my whole ish here.
No, that's totally fair. I just think that if we are, there's just a fun element to this where if we're getting the final that I think we're going to get, which is going to be Charleston versus Colorado Springs, I think that no matter who hosts Colorado Springs or Charleston, if we're assuming it comes down to those two, talk about two fun places to go and talk about two fun venues. I mean, Patriots Point is one of the prettiest places that you can go to watch a soccer match. But I mean, Colorado Springs is just an incredible place, and Widener Field is just an incredible place, just an incredible venue. Everybody who's ever been there says it's just absolutely stunning. I think that if it ends up in Las Vegas, you're also going to say, I can't believe how much this team, this ownership has built this place up. Something we talked about on Soccer Down Here today. Go watch a match from last year. Colorado Springs in December. It's not December, Andy. It's November. But look at a match from last year from Las Vegas and watch a match from later on this year. Look at how much the Bautista and co have made improvements to Cashman Field. No matter what, you're going to get an incredible showing for the league, which is investment. Look at how the club has invested in Patriots Point with the Battery. Obviously, Colorado Springs has their own stadium. Cashman Field was taken from a dump to pretty nice now with incredible improvements. And then you have Rhode Island, who spent big money in the offseason. No matter what, this is a story of investment from the USL in this Final Four. And I think for the league, you could not be more excited.
Yeah, I mean, like at the macro level, the narrative of these four teams, this isn't Louisville City. It's not Tampa Bay. It's not Sacramento. These aren't the teams you think of as that traditional elite. And the fact that they're all competing, they all have something very compelling about them. And there are aspects of them, not only on the field, but operationally, that kind of point to the direction the USL wants to be moving. That's a feather in the cap of these clubs, and kind of in counter to what we were talking about with Memphis, right? Like, this is what the league wants to be.
I will say with the Colorado Springs match against Orange County getting moved to a snowstorm due to a snowstorm, if we have the chance to have a Snow Classico USL Cup final, I believe we should pull out all the stops and try and make that work. Like an Orange Ball final, like that would just be not only just so photogenic for the league, like we would look back on that match many years from now and just say that was iconic.
Now, here's a question. Would they use the Super League ball, as that is, I think, the only true orange ball on the league, like, sponsorship through Select?
Let's do it. Here we go.
I believe they had an orange ball, like actually as the primary ball back in like the old USL like 2015 days. I have to find the stock photo. I used to have it saved for any like generic article I wrote back then,
just in case you needed it.
You never know when you need a generic corner flag photo.
Yeah.
Well, that is that in terms of these previews. From round one, where it took us about an hour 45 to get through everything, to we previewed a final and two conference finals in less than an hour. We have plenty of time if there's any missed points that you want to get out there.
Yeah, we'll let the chat simmer for a second. In the meantime, just circling back on the Jordan Farr thing, amazing to see somebody who is universally loved in the league, has been one of the top goalkeepers in the USL since he kind of took over the starting job in San Antonio, to get that nod in DC. And then for DC United, back-to-back years to buy a player from the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Everything about that is a positive development. As much as it kind of hurts for Rowdies fans, like a bittersweet moment, but still good stuff.
I mean, I think it's kind of funny how quickly that came out. Like, legit, the Malloy goal goes in. It's like, oh, yeah, Jordan Farr is going to DC. Like, but I wonder how much of that was known by teammates. And I'm not saying, like, teammates are going to sit there and be like, he threw the game to go to MLS. Everybody knows that's not what happened. I just wonder how much of that did they know. I wonder if that was a conversation at all. Like, you know, I'm not going to be here next year, guys. Let's go all the way. Let's win it all.
And just to answer the question in the chat, it seems like it is a pretty nominal fee right now, but there are some performance incentives. So small amount of money to Tampa Bay, small to none at the moment. But if he gets playing time, it'll pretty quickly go up for the Rowdies.
Did Lauro get a transfer fee from Tampa Bay to FC Cincinnati, or was that a free?
I have no idea.
Okay, fair enough.
It looks like he was a free agent. Yeah.
Was he a free agent? Okay. Well, now it's going to be interesting to see how, and we're not in a postseason preview, but it's going to be interesting to see how Tampa Bay moves on post Jordan Farr. I mean, Sparrow, I think, is still at the club. So,
no, he left last year. Yeah.
Oh, did he?
They benched Jordan Farr for Phil Brano like.
Oh, that's right.
5 weeks ago, and then Farr won the job back. But I mean, clearly they've got some trust in him. He's somebody with a long track record in the league at various levels.
Bring back Ryko. Bring back a Rosarena. Why not? Let's have a good time.
I mean, Vegas kind of tried to replace him at the end of the season, and that's turned out well that he's ended up back in goal.
That's one thing I meant to mention. Ryko Rosarena with the ball at his feet. He waits to the last possible second to release that ball, and it scares me every time, and it's never gone wrong for him.
He's bold, man. He's fun to watch.
He is also just a what's the word? He is just a fiery guy. I mean, in the penalty shootout they had a few weeks ago, like he was just screaming at everybody. If it moved, he screamed at it. It was awesome. Let's see. Anything else? Anybody just wondering? If you're not in our live chats, by the way, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is where you get live questions in, any kind of comments. This is where, if you missed it, Ben Clemens was questioning my ability as a teacher, rightfully so. If you would like to see admins of clubs make fun of us, it's a great time. So hop into those chats. But I don't see any other things coming in. So any final USL thoughts for us?
I'll self-plug a little bit. I have a tactical preview of the League One Championship game coming out on the league site tomorrow, which is always a nice little thrill for me. So go check that out and read up on the matchup before you watch it Sunday at 3 on Galazzo.
Yeah. You had mentioned it earlier today, Kaylor, as well. But check out the Blue Sky account for the USL Show and pretty much any other USL personality that you know from across the championship, League One. It's pretty much all happening over on Blue Sky. You're seeing a lot more clubs. I mean, shout out to Detroit, New Mexico, Hartford off the top of my head, Omaha and Richmond down in League One for getting accounts set up as well. And hoping to see a lot more USL clubs and our USL friends joining the site.
Can I just say with Blue Sky, like, I wasn't really there early Twitter, which is the kind of time frame people keep talking about, but it's got a little bit more of like a group chat vibe. Twitter felt very corporate and weird by the end days that we're in right now. Blue Sky's a breath of fresh air in comparison. So I'm still posting both places because always got to be plugging, but I'm a lot more active, like enjoying myself on Blue Sky.
Yeah. I remember something I was going to mention, and it was a kind of a comment that was dropped in. There's a lot of Reading United, where you have Aaron Malloy, Zach Zandy, and there's apparently a few other Reading United members who are in this final. So just a lot of love coming from Reading United. More of that League to professional pipeline is really showing out in all of these matches, which is always fun to see. One question that came in: how quickly do you see a Bryce Jamison transfer get announced? if it's the same thing that I've been hearing with other transfers going out of the country, is going to be closer to the time of the official roster dump that everybody does at the end of the season. And mainly a league wants to promote it, and they don't want to have to fight, final plus massive transfer of one of the bright young stars going to Europe or somewhere else.
I say January window.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, Jameson and Corcoran are absolutely on their way out, and the league has made a lot of money at this point on young players. Speaking of your backheeled article, John, on the questions for the USL and stuff, and you kind of mentioned the MLS Next Pro and how that's going to work with young players. Yes. I thought that was just absolutely fascinating, and not that people should go subscribe. Yes, do the paywall. That's how good journalism gets paid, people. It's okay. You can spare $7? I have $7 and I'm a teacher. You'll be fine. It was one thing that you kind of mentioned, that MLS Next Pro has so much young talent that you kind of fear for USL, but the USL is just churning out good player after good player after good player, that it seems like for just US soccer in general, the ecosystem, both can kind of exist at the same time and not screw with each other's markets.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting conundrum of, and this was a point our friend Mike Pendleton made on Twitter, the average age in MLS Next Pro is about 21 years old at both levels of the USL and Championship and League One. That is, it's about 26. If you're a European scout, you're watching the league with the younger talent. Now, on paper, USL has always had the advantage of not being MLS contractually. So these up-and-comers can come to the league, get immediate playing time for a year or two, and then just move on over to Europe. When you've got teams like the Carolina Core or Chattanooga FC coming into the league, they're independent and not necessarily beholden to that setup. Suddenly you've got a little bit more of a rivalry. And we've already seen Carolina Core about to sell a player to Legia Warsaw. So it's something to watch. I think the whole point of the article in general was not to call that it's the apocalypse happening for the USL, but kind of point out that on fronts like youth development, and I think I pointed out 5 other areas, you need to be aware of threats from elsewhere, because American soccer, as we again saw with the news at the beginning today, never really is as solid as you might think it is.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into some final thoughts on the night. Ryan, what's your final thoughts?
Yeah, so give the Emmys to Farrell and Malati already for the Penguin. I watched the finale from Sunday, and it was just an excellent first season. Excited to see where this Gotham universe goes. They've left enough breadcrumbs that there's going to be at least a lot of really fun stories left to tell. So check out the Penguin.
I did not expect the last shot of the Penguin. I won't spoil for anyone who's not up and at 'em and finished with the finale. I mean, it probably should have been obvious, but it's kind of almost a little twist ending for people who see their way through to the end. In terms of things I'm doing / have done, I'm never a guy who gets advanced movie tickets, but I just booked a ticket for Gladiator 2 next week because I can't wait. Denzel, Ancient Rome. What else does a human being want, honestly?
Fair. I'm about to get Fridays back, which is exciting. If any of my employers are listening, I am very sad that our football team has lost in the playoffs. I am very sad about that, but I am really excited to get home before 3 a.m. Saturday morning. That's something I'm really sick of doing. So for a full night of sleep, that is something I'm just absolutely stoked for. Could not be more excited. So
love to hear it.
Well, that is that. And again, watch the USL League One Finals. Is going to be on Golazo, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. go watch it. It is going to be awesome. You're going to have a blast. And if this is your first time watching League One this season, enjoy yourself, because especially this Union Omaha team, like Ryan said, can be one of the best teams, if not the best team to ever play in League One. And Spokane, I mean, they're going to be possibly one of the first team or the first expansion team to win a League One title since, well, the expansion of League One existing altogether. It's going to be an absolute blast. It's going to be a fun atmosphere out in Omaha. So check it out. Turn it on, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Golasso Network, USL League One Final. And with that, for the first time and the last time, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.